Hello, and thank you for joining our Teach In for the 21st Century webinars brought to you by the David Horowitz Freedom Center and the Glazov Gang. I'm your host, Annie Cyrus. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box you see on your screen. And for tonight, our guest, son of Holocaust survivors, Dov Hikind. He is the founder of Americans Against Anti-Semitism. He also served in the New York State Assembly for 36 years. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
We are all very much excited to hear all your thoughts. So, floor is yours.
Yeah, well, the situation with anti-Semitism, we're in a period right now where Corona is what people are talking about. They're talking about the demonstrations and the things that are going on in this country, in terms of everything, destroying monuments, and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, anti-Semitism is alive. It's there. And ultimately, sadly, it is, whatever's going on in the world. If it's Corona, guess who's responsible for Corona? The Jews. Whatever the issue is, it is always, people come around to blaming the Jewish people. When it comes to the police departments in America, you've had things put out all over the world, talking about how police departments in America are trained by the Israeli security services, and therefore whatever's happening in this country in terms of the police, again, it's the Jews who are responsible. Sounds all too familiar, as someone who never had the pleasure of having grandparents. I am a grandfather. I have 6 grandchildren, but I never had grandparents. And the only reason was because they were murdered by those who were filled with hate for the Jewish people. I never met a grandfather, grandmother growing up, and it is just amazing to watch the kind of things that are going on in this country that are very scary. I can tell you that people in the Jewish community in particular, it's not being talked about. Nobody is really interested at this point. But people are very concerned, and not just the Jewish community. Americans who love this country are deeply concerned about the future. They see what's going on. And all you basically see in the media is a one-sided presentation of, whether it's the demonstrations, whatever it is, but people are concerned. People are afraid about the future. People are afraid about the anti-Semitism that is happening as we speak, and are afraid of what's coming. But again, no one is really discussing this. You have a Democratic Party, anyone who in any way violates the politically correct rules. We don't even know what they are exactly, okay? You've got to be so freaking careful what you say, because if you say the wrong thing, they're going to crucify you. You're going to lose your job. You're going to be lambasted in the media, and so on and so forth. We don't even know what is politically, what exactly can I say and what can I not say? We have professors in this country who have gotten into trouble because, freedom of expression only exists for people who are on the left. People on the left can say whatever they want, and it's perfectly kosher. It's perfectly fine. But if you are everyone else in America, and you want to express your feelings, and you want to express your concern, and you want to talk about the things that are going on. I mean, I have to tell you, one of my favorite people throughout history, since I was a kid, okay, since I was 7 years old, my favorite person in history is Abraham Lincoln, okay? I love Abraham Lincoln. I've read more books on Abraham Lincoln than about any other person in the world, okay? The idea that there are people out there who want to destroy a monument with Abraham Lincoln or so many other monuments, I guarantee you, they have no freaking clue about Abraham Lincoln and what he represented. They have a superficial view. I don't even know what their reason is for feeling the way they do, but it is superficial, that I guarantee you. And it is scary for a lot of people. I mean, is this real, or is this a bad dream? Defund the police? What are we going to be left with? When I make a phone call that there's been an incident on my corner or in the park, who's going to react? How long will I have to wait for a police officer to come and deal with the situation? Defund the police? And that has become, look, the crazies are the crazies, and there are a lot of crazies out there. But there are a lot of other people who are playing the game, who are going along with the crazies because it's politically, required. Because if you want to be successful, if you're going to be running for mayor of New York, you got to outdo the other person in terms of being progressive, liberal, more progressive. The more money you can cut from the police budget, that makes you a greater hero for some people. It is absolute insanity what is going on at this particular time. And unfortunately, you don't have enough people standing up, speaking. I mean, we watch things, but where is the silent majority? Where are the regular people all over to say, this is nonsense, this is idiotic? Law and order. I mean, we're talking about protecting our communities. We're talking about, police officers, and without police officers, total chaos. Without police officers, there's no future. We're all in terrible trouble. Police officers do a great job. Now, are there people on the police force who maybe shouldn't be on the police force? Well, are there politicians who shouldn't be in politics? Are there teachers who shouldn't be in a classroom? Are there rabbis or priests who shouldn't be priests or rabbis because it's just not their thing? The answer is yes. But to talk about the police in this universal fashion, to talk about all the police as if they are all one, is absolutely outrageous. And unfortunately, with the help of the liberal progressive media, which, by the way, is almost everybody, okay, it's almost everybody, we're living in dangerous times. People in New York, people are leaving the city. They're moving, they're getting out of here. And guess who's getting out of here? The people who, pay taxes. The people who keep the city going. They don't want to be part of the city. They're concerned about the future. So we have a very, very serious situation that we are facing. And anti-Semitism, again, I was saying before that if you look at someone the wrong way, you're called a racist. Okay? Very simple. But when it comes to anti-Semitism, it's a whole different story. That's because, white privilege. We Jews, we're powerful. We control everything, right? That's what the anti-Semites tell us. We control the media. We control everything in America. We're responsible for Floyd's being murdered. You actually have people out there who are blaming the state of Israel, the people of Israel. They are responsible because Israel trains American police officers, which, by the way, the fact that it isn't true doesn't really matter. People, the people out on the streets, the so-called progressive liberals, they don't want to be confused with the facts. They don't want to be confused with the facts. Don't tell me what the facts are. The anti-Semitism, the hatred for the people of Israel, the state of Israel. You asked me a question, and I've been going on for quite a while, but let me make another point that I think is important. How absurd things are when it comes to the Jewish people. The power of the Jewish people. Wow. Let me tell you how many Jews there are in the entire world. In the entire world. Israel, America, Europe, Latin America, you name it, all over the world. How many Jews are there? 14.7 million. Out of a population, that's all it is. People don't realize this. There are less Jews today than in 1939, before the Holocaust. Can you believe what I'm saying? There are only this is the latest information from the professionals, 14.7 million Jews. The population of the world is approximately 8 billion people. 8 billion, 14.7 million. But the Jews are responsible, the Jews control, the Jews have all this power. It is a real sickness and a very dangerous one. And it's coming from all sides of the political spectrum. It's coming from the left, of course, white privilege. I'm white. Can you tell that I'm white? Do I have white privilege? I mean, my mother was in Auschwitz in 1944. My mother went to Auschwitz along with her parents and nephews and nieces and sisters, and most of her family went straight to the gas chambers the day they arrived in Auschwitz. So am I part of the white privilege? Are my kids part of the white privilege? My father had a fruit store after going through the Holocaust when he came to this great country that we live in. My father sold apples and oranges to make a living. He worked 6 days a week. The only time he didn't work was on the Jewish Sabbath. That was it. Morning, night, just to be able to make sure that his family would eat, to make sure that his family could get a good education. By the way, that is one of the things I have to say about the Jewish people. Let me tell you, we're very successful, some of us are, in terms of the secret of the Jewish people of success. And everyone can be part of it. It's called education. Education. That's all it is. It's very simple. We're not the chosen people. We're not better than anyone else. But from the day that I was old enough to be able to look at a book, my parents were teaching me to read, to write. My own children, 3 kids that I have, I remember when they were young, every single week, I used to teach at Baruch College here in New York, political science, and it was right next to Barnes & Noble. Every day that I was teaching the course at Baruch College, I went to Barnes & Noble to bring home books for my kids, because that's what the Jewish people are all about. It's about education, the values of education, getting educated. So yes, we are guilty. We are guilty of having too many Jews at NYU, at Cornell, at Harvard, at universities all over. But no one gave us a silver spoon. No one created special rules for Jews to be able to get into programs like affirmative action programs. No, you had to compete. And so I'm very, very concerned about the future. I'm concerned about what's going on, and the fact that when it comes to anti-Semitism, there's a double standard. There's one standard for everyone. When it comes to racism, it's very clear. Look at me the wrong way, you're a racist. But when it comes to anti-Semitism, you can have the Talebs and the Omars and the AOCs and Linda Sarsour. They can get away with vicious, malicious comments and statements about Jews, about Jewish power and Jewish control and Jewish money. And you can't get the House of Representatives. You can't get Nancy Pelosi to pass a resolution specifically, if you remember those days. You can't get Pelosi to do a resolution on anti-Semitism. At the end, they do a resolution, not about anti-Semitism, about everything. That's not what we're doing with racism directed against the Black community. And we can do better, and we must do better. But things are out of control. and everyone should be worried. I rest my case.
Very well done.
Okay.
But let me quickly go over some of the points you made before I start reading the questions of our audience. You mentioned that there are people out there who blame the state of Israel for what happened to George Floyd. I'm almost positive you are aware of this news, but Islamic Republic of Iran, which is my motherland, they paid for an international exhibition for George Floyd. Lots of artworks on the walls. One thing that caught my eye the most was when somebody did a cartoon of the police officer's knee on the neck of George Floyd, his face replaced with Star of David.
Absolutely. You know, there's a lot of that connected to Iran. You had, what's his name? Waters, that wonderful human being from England, who actually came out. I was watching a video of him earlier today where he says the exact same thing. He says, it is the Jews, it is the Israelis, they're the ones to blame for everything. Again, nothing has changed. It's so easy to blame someone else and to scapegoat the Jewish people. It's nothing new. I can't even say I'm surprised because I'm so used to it. I am so used to this attitude. Let's just blame someone else. And it's just easy to blame the Jewish people. You know, when I tell people how many Jews there are in the world, you know, I was going to do the percentage earlier, you know, 14.7 million out of 8 billion. I mean, I couldn't even do it because it was so ridiculous. But so many people all over the world are so preoccupied with the Jewish people, with Israel. I mean, the BDS movement that everyone is familiar with, supported by people like Tlaib and Omar and so on and so on, and AOC, right? They care about human rights, but they're very particular about which human rights they care for. They don't care for everyone human rights. They don't care for the people in Iran, the average citizens of Iran, the regular people in Iran. They don't care about, you know, how many people have been murdered in Syria over the past 5-6 years? How many civilians have been murdered by their own government? There are more than 190 countries in the world. 190. There's only one BDS movement. Boycott, divest, sanction. Only one, directed against, of course, against the Jewish people. Is there a BDS directed against China? China has 1 million Muslims in concentration camps. How many people have spoken out? We got to do a BDS movement. We got to boycott, sanction, divest from China. We can't deal with China or Russia or so many other countries in the world that don't even have any idea what human rights are all about. One single country, the Jewish people. And that is exactly why the definition of anti-Semitism worldwide, accepted by so many countries throughout the world, by the US, Europe, etc. BDS, boycotting Israel, this campaign is a form of anti-Semitism. And again, I want to make it very clear. You have every right to criticize the state of Israel. I've disagreed with policies of Israel over the last dozens and dozens of years. I don't always agree with the policies of the Israeli government. I've gone out publicly to be critical. That's okay. That's democracy. But to pick one single country and isolate that country, 194 countries, I challenge anyone out there, tell me one other country that has a BDS movement directed against that country. The answer, of course, we know, is no one. Only the people of Israel, only the Jewish people. And what's going on, you know, in social media, in terms of, and this is extremely painful to watch. There's so much out there in terms of portraying the people of Israel, portraying Israel, doing the comparison that Israel is like Nazi Germany, that Israel, the way Israel deals with the challenges that it has is no different than the Nazis did with the Jews. I mean, you have this all over the place. There are studies that have just come out that show this horrible, horrible comparison. And this is done in this country. It's done throughout Europe. I mean, you know, should Twitter and Facebook permit things like this to portray the Jewish people as being like the Nazis, the Jewish people who were the victims of Nazism more than anyone else? I mean, 6 million? I mean, nobody wants to hear about this. I'm sorry. You know, people, when you say this in some liberal places about the Holocaust, oh, I don't want to hear about the Holocaust. Enough with the Holocaust. 6 million of our people. 2 million children were murdered.
May
you know what their crime was? Because they were Jews.
I'm so glad you said that. I don't know if you noticed or not. I'm a huge supporter of Israel, America, and my motherland. But I'm glad you brought that up, because here's one of the hypocrisy that bothers me the most. If I want to do a video, or if I want to talk about Holocaust, nobody wants to hear about it. It's history, let it go. But when we talk about slavery in America, everybody wants to hear about it. It's not history. We shouldn't let it go. We should drag it for years and years. And that is the hypocrisy that runs in our country today. Yeah. Jewish people don't deserve to stand up and say we were slaughtered. But free Black people in America get to burn down our country because something happened in history. My point is, if you're going to honor history, every land deserves to have their history. As you said, that's
absolutely. Yeah, you have to respect other people. That's fundamental, and that is not the case, unfortunately. You know, over the past week or so, I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with this, but it's shocking. It makes me angry. I'd like to punch somebody, excuse the expression. You've had a number of people like Ice Cube, right? We're all familiar with Ice Cube, okay? You know, and we had Chelsea Handler, you know, this actress, comedian, this idiot, this jerk of a person. She actually came out in the past week and praised Louis Farrakhan. She saw some video from way back. Louis Farrakhan is the Adolf Hitler of our time. He is the most vile anti-Semite. And by the way, he not only hates Jews, he hates people who are gay. He hates a lot of other people. And you have, this is what scares me. When you have respectable, decent people. I'm not talking about Ice Cube. I don't know how decent, respectable he is. But Ice Cube defends Louis Farrakhan, and he actually says that it's his point of view. When he was criticized, he said, it's his point of view. He has a right to his point of view. And you have these other people, and you have some other actresses who go along with Chelsea, saying, yeah, she's right, defending her. You know, at the end, she removed the tweet. In the end, she removed the video. In the end, she apologized. But how did that happen? What are the consequences? Right? I say one wrong word, I'm done. I'm done. I'm finished. My career is over. But you have these people who have millions of followers. She thought that Louis Farrakhan, what he said on some show 20 years ago, was wonderful. She spread the word. I mean, can you imagine spreading the word of Adolf Hitler? How about this? How about spreading the word of the former heads of the KKK? You know, who are horrible people, but maybe they said something worthwhile. Maybe they made a good speech and made some good points. And you know, I want to share it. Would I be talking to you tonight? I'd be dead. It would be over. I'd be crucified in the media. But you have respectable actresses defending Louis Farrakhan? Are they idiots? Are they dumb? Are they not aware? And by the way, what's happened to their careers? Have they lost anything? Like so many other people in the center right, who if they say anything or do anything, you know, freedom of speech, forget about it. No freedom of speech. It's over, it's finished. Consequences, zero.
Yeah.
Zero.
They don't lose anything. They gain a lot. They gain in more exposure. They gain more income. Their paycheck goes up because they're most popular within the society that has been dumbed down because they haven't been taught history. Let me go ahead and start on asking you the questions from our lovely audience. The very first question I have here says, how much of the hatred of Jews comes from propaganda being pushed in America by the Islamic movement?
I think that one part of the problem, you know, where's the hate coming from? You know, we had an outbreak of anti-Semitism before Corona in New York. In New York, not, you know, not in states in the South. We're talking about New York, progressive New York. We had anti-Semitism out of control in New York prior to the pandemic, right? And very, very little was done. And there was very little reaction, I have to say. It was only when Jews were stabbed, when Jews were murdered, that some of the political people began to react. But I wish to God that some of these political liberal progressives had given us 5% of what they are giving right now in terms of Floyd and other things that they feel are important. You didn't have that. You had silence on the part of the mayor, the governor. All they did was say, I condemn anti-Semitism. This was their great contribution. This was the courage they showed. By the way, almost all the incidents of anti-Semitism in New York, going back over the past year, unprecedented. We never had numbers like this. Almost all of it emanated from the Black community. We don't blame the Black community, but you got to deal with reality. That was the reality. I remember talking to Mayor de Blasio, having long conversations, begging and pleading with him to do something about this. How do you solve a problem if you don't want to acknowledge the problem? How do you solve a problem? And they just refused to do that. They refused to do that. And sadly, we had a situation that was out of control. And right now, I mean, Jews were afraid to walk the streets. I have to tell you that so many people would say to me, is there a future for American Jews? I couldn't believe. Are we living in a pre-Nazi Germany period? My answer was no. God forbid. We're not anywhere like that in this country. The fact that people express these sentiments, the fact that mothers and fathers were afraid to let their kids out, the fact that mothers were afraid to put their kids on public transportation because things were happening every day, every single day. And it culminated with Jersey City, with Jews being murdered. It culminated with Muncie, New York during Hanukkah, where people were stabbed because they were Jews. So people were very concerned, and I can tell you people are very concerned about the future, in particular about the Democratic Party, about the liberal progressives in the Democratic Party. Look, you can be liberal and you can be progressive, that's not the issue. But you've got to have one standard for hate. You can't treat hate one way when it comes to anti-Semitism and racism differently. They are both evil. They both result in terrible things happening in our society. And unfortunately, they're not treated the same way. Sadly, Tlaib is still in Congress. Omar is still in Congress. Linda Sarsour, I mean, this is a classic. Linda Sarsour, her record of hate, again, towards not just Israel and Jews, but towards other groups of people is beyond comprehension. But you know what? She's a superstar. If you don't believe me, ask Bernie Sanders. She's a superstar. Double standard, triple standard. How does she get away with that? How does she survive? I remember going to, when Linda Saussure was picked to do a commencement speech at City University, going back a while ago, and I came out and tried everything in the world through the media demonstrations to stop that. I remember going to Gracie Mansion to meet with de Blasio, and I came with a portfolio. I mean, I came with documents. Linda Saussure, in her own words of hate, supporting violence, supporting terrorism, and so on and so forth. And I showed it to the mayor, who said, "Oh, I wasn't aware of all that. I wasn't aware." Do you think it changed anything at the end of the day? Most of these politicians, okay, I'm not smarter than anyone else, but most of the politicians, remember, the rioting, the violence, it all happened in cities run by Democratic progressive mayors, in many cases, police chiefs who are Black, very liberal, very, very progressive. We know that. It is in these places, I mean, these liberal places. I mean, de Blasio has been mayor for 7 years. Where has he been? We had, nobody wants to talk about this, but we had Obama. Anybody remember Obama, President Obama, 8 years? Why didn't they do all the things they're talking about now? Where were they? How about giving Obama some blame if they feel that we haven't made progress? He was the mayor, he was the president not too long ago.
Well, as you said, it's always easier to blame someone else, which is one of the typical behavior of Marxist, socialist, Democrats, far left.
Absolutely.
That's what they do.
The truth doesn't matter. The truth and the facts just confuse people, unfortunately, on the left. They don't want to hear the facts. You know, Israel gets blamed for, this little country, 6.5 million Jews. That's all it is, by the way. 6.5, surrounded by enemies, some of them who openly say, we want to destroy this state. We want to destroy this state. Israel has made so many attempts to make peace during the Ehud Barak period, during the Ehud Omar period when he was prime minister. By the way, little fact, 1948, there were supposed to be two states, a Jewish state and an Arab state. The Jews said yes, and the Arabs attacked the state of Israel at that time in 1948 to destroy the Jewish people at that time, 600,000 Jews. There could have been two states. Who said no? Who attacked? Who went to war?
To be fair, as an ex-Muslim, here's how I'm going to put it. It doesn't matter how many more years. 100,000 years later, this will be the same. I'm sure you're familiar with this saying. I'm not going to say the name because I don't want to butcher her name, but former Prime Minister of Israel said, there will be no peace until Arabs learn to celebrate life more than death. Palestinians, Iranians, Syrians, Afghan, they grow up with the following, and the day of peace will not arrive until you fight the Jews, and the stones will talk and say, hey, Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill it. You can't make peace with that statement.
The shame of it is that Arab leaders throughout the last 70 years, they have done such a disservice. That's being kind. The only refugees that remain in this world, we had refugees after World War II, millions and millions of refugees who were displaced in different countries. But those refugees, you don't hear about any refugees except the Palestinian refugees. I mean, the Arab nations throughout the last 70 years have had trillions of dollars as a result of their energy, the oil that they sold to America and to the world. Every Palestinian could be living in a palace, instead of being refugees. The Palestinian people have been used. It's so sad because they have been told over the last 70 years, you know what? Stay in your so-called refugee camp, because one day you're going back to Jaffa. One day you're going back to Haifa. One day you're going back to wherever your great-grandparents lived. Instead of dealing with the problem, instead of dealing with the refugee issue, unfortunately, Arab leaders throughout history, some of it has changed. The Middle East has changed. Some of it, some of the nations who are friendly with Israel, who have relationships with Israel. But the Palestinian people are the greatest victims. They are victims of their own leaders who have used them all of these years to keep them in refugee camps. It's really a sad, sad chapter of history. But does anyone want to acknowledge it? Does anyone want to talk about it? All we hear from Democrats is two-state solution, right? That's all we hear about, two-state solution. The people of Israel throughout the last since 1967, were always ready to make peace. The people of Israel were always ready to make concessions for peace. But unfortunately, that has changed to a great extent because of the reality on the ground, the terrorism, the murdering of Jews, of going to a restaurant, going to a pizza joint, getting on a bus. I remember the days when buses were being blown up. My kids were studying in Israel. After graduating high school, they went to Israel to study. I remember going to Albany on my way to work at the state capitol. Every time a bomb went off in Jerusalem, my heart fell out. The first thing I would think of, where's Yoni, my son Yoni? Where's my son Shmuel? Where are they? The bomb just went off in Jerusalem. I hope they were not there when the bomb went off. And this was happening every single week. That is the tragedy. And what is the result of that? The result is the Palestinians are where they are, which is nowhere. And the people of Israel have lost faith that there is a real partner. When children in schools in Judea and Samaria and Ramallah and all of these different cities, in Hebron, when young people study in school, you go to school, you're in 5th grade, 6th grade, high school, you know what you study? To hate Jews. The Jews are the enemy. How can there be peace? I totally get it. If Palestinians hate Jews, I get it. If you teach people to hate other people for enough years, they will grow up to hate those other people. And it is a very, very sad chapter.
We are almost out of time. I have one more question for you, but I like to, just because you said, they have lost hope, I'm going to use my own life experience to give a little bit of hope to this discussion. As I said, I was born and raised in Islamic Republic of Iran. I had a father who was a sheikh, and I went to school every day until age of pretty much 15. And at home, at a school, at local mosque, everywhere they taught me to hate Jews. I don't. I love them. Every single one of them.
Well, I love you. I love you.
Thank you. My life mission, even if it's a day before I die, I will go to Israel. My point is, yes, they are brainwashing children. Yes, Lina Sarsour calls it a pure courage when a 4-year-old Palestinian boy stands with a stone in his hand.
All right. Oh, yeah.
But on the other end, those of us who really care for humanity, can send out the message that just because you were trained to hate me doesn't mean I hate you back. I will love you until you learn to love me back. There's a way to overwrite this.
I first of all, thank you, and I love you for who you are, and I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. It is very sad what has happened It really is. And while I have very strong feelings, and I am a very proud Jew and a very proud American, very, very proud of both of those things. This is the greatest country on the face of the earth. No question about it. Perfect? Who's perfect? No person is perfect? No one is perfect. But tell me a country that has more to offer all people than this great nation. There isn't anything. It's plain and simple. But it is very, very sad to see the tragedies in the Middle East as a result of the hate that young people have been taught in school and by others, that to murder people, I mean, let's get this, to blow yourself up and to murder innocent men, women, and children, that you go straight to heaven. What kind of religion is that?
It's called the Mohammedan religion.
Yeah.
Let me read the last question we can squeeze in. The question says, a lot of anti-Jew propaganda pushes ideas that the Jews did the 9/11, September 11th. The dancing Israelis who supposedly celebrated September 11, Israel's attack on the US. Do you have any response to those people?
Look, it goes along with everything else that Jews are responsible for. We're in charge of everything. Then how come we have all these problems, for God's sake? You know, if the media is all Jews, why am I complaining about how Israel is being treated by the liberal media, right? It's part of the territory, unfortunately. It's so easy. The scapegoat, again, in spite of what I said before, how many Jews there are in the world, nobody should even be talking about Jews. We hardly register as a number, right? When I tell people the number that I shared with you, they look at me and they say, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? But that is the reality. There are less Jews today in the world than prior to the Holocaust in 1938. It's sad. It's very, very sad. But everyone is preoccupied with the Jews. Just blame the Jews. We're responsible. The only thing I will say is that, yes, many Jews are successful. But the reason for that is because of hard work, because of values that are installed in people from the youngest age. The great secret of the Jewish people, let's not tell anybody, I hope this is between me and you, it's education. That's all it is, education. That's the answer to all the problems and all the issues. And it starts in the home.
And that is exactly why the opposite side in Middle East, if you pay attention, in every Islamic country, they do their best to produce as many uneducated people as they can. As a girl, you don't get to go to school. If you're in my motherland, you get to go to school until daddy says no. That is exactly the key. They can continue maintaining their slaves being population of, as you said, the refugees and the Iranians and the Syrians and all of them. They're easier to control because they're not educated. So I'm completely in agreement with you. Would you please tell our audience, where can they go to read more, to get to know you even more and enjoy everything you're putting out and publishing?
Well, first of all, AmericansAA.org. They should go to that website. They should support what we're doing. You know, one of the things about us, about me, our group, we're not afraid. You know, I confronted Rashida Tlaib at Rutgers University recently. Confronted her directly. Being proud, being strong, being proud of who you are, and not being afraid. I don't care what the odds are. It doesn't really matter. You know, education is the most important thing. I got to tell you, I'm a little older than I was. I never stopped reading. I never stopped ordering books. I never stopped learning more about the things that I thought I knew. In fact, the more I read, the more I discover how little I know. So it is important. You know, there's a price. You know, to be educated. It can't be superficial. So many of the young people out in the streets, they don't know. They don't know their history. Why are they removing, and why do they want to remove Abraham Lincoln? Why? Why? Abraham Lincoln was one of the greatest men in this country, one of the greatest men in the world, but you need to know more. He wasn't perfect, but he was one of the great, great people who fought against slavery and gave his life, by the way. He was murdered by someone who didn't like his point of view in support of Black people. I mean, it is, but you know, I don't care if you have a college degree. That doesn't mean you're educated. It doesn't mean you know your history. And you got to invest the time. Study the Middle East. Study the history of our country. You're not going to like everything. You know, nobody's perfect. Is your mother perfect? Your father? Am I perfect? Are you perfect? No. But we need to respect each other. We need to talk to each other, not past each other. There's no dialogue. You can't say what you really feel and what you really want to say. No one wants to have a discussion because, unfortunately, in particular, the liberals and by the way, I'm a Democrat. I ran 18 times as a Democrat to the New York State Assembly, okay? I'm not a blind Democrat. I'm not a blind Republican. I'm an American who loves this country, period.
Amen. Thank you so very much for being with us tonight again. I really enjoyed our discussion.
It's a pleasure. I hope we meet again.
Absolutely. And to our audience who stayed with us tonight, thank you so much. Remember, these webinars are brought to you by the David Horowitz Freedom Center and the Glazov Gang for free. So if you want to support them to continue bringing you webinars like this, consider going to frontpagemag.com and make a 100% tax-deductible donation. Until the next time, stay safe. Goodbye.